GP Lyon. Hello my friends and welcome to coverage of GP Lyon's Top 8. You're in the booth with Riley Knight. I'm joined by Simon Gertzen here for some Sunday night magic. Simon, we have Mono Green Tron, the deck of the tournament, I think it's fair to say, up against Gregor Kowalski, who snuck in 8th place with his very, very spicy number here, Red Green Eldrazi. No Tron lands to speak of here, just some very hard-hitting threats.
And the 4 Eldrazi Temple, of course, which have always been better than the Tron lands, even in Eldrazi Tron. So I think Gregor might be, I don't want to say on a metagame breaker for Modern, but certainly for this tournament, he must enjoy playing against these Tron lists with his main deck of aggressive Eldrazi, but also with his sideboard, which includes even Crumble to Dust as a tech card.
We were talking earlier in the day about the fact that Crumble to Dust has kind of fallen off the radar as one of the anti-Tron cards, but I tell you what, Kowalski will be very happy that he's packing 2 copies of that card in his sideboard. And the Grove of the Burn Willows here is a very, very good call from him in a field overrun with Death Shadow. I mean, overrun actually might be an overstatement here because Death Shadow has been on the outer.
Death Shadow didn't perform very well on day 2. I think on day 1, the Death Shadow pilots were a little bit better than their opposition, but on day 2, if the metagame is hostile, it's just going to reflect in your win percentage.
2 lands here for this Matter Reshaper, the 3/2 coming down 1 turn earlier than advertised thanks to that Eldrazi Temple. And Capiello is going to cast an Oblivion Stone. Now, this is a pretty key play for him, given that Kowalski's going to want to get on the board very quickly. In with the 3/2 now. Capiello down to 18 after that. Grove of the Burn Willows provided him with an extra point of life.
Maybe a follow-up Thought-Knots here. Not great in the face of an Oblivion Stone, but you have to pressure your opponent somehow.
So here is the Thought-Knots here. Let's have a look at what Capiello's working with. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, another copy of Ancient Stirrings, and a Walking Ballista. A tricky decision here for Kowalski.
Yes, but the Walking Ballista I don't think is very scary. Of course, Ancient Stirrings is likely to give Davida another threat. However, he's very far off Tron, so we could even see Gregor take Ulamog here. On the other hand, he is packing those Eldrazi Obligators. Maybe he wants Capiello to cast Ulamog.
Start casting some of those big boys so he can steal them right back. Eldrazi Obligator in a great position against so many of the cheap and hard-hitting threats in Modern. All of the Delve creatures, of course, great to snag with an Obligator, in addition to these huge powerhouses from the decks like Mono Green Tron.
Also not something your opponents necessarily expect. Of course, they have to realize that this is not your traditional Eldrazi Tron or Bunt Eldrazi, so you have to at least think about what the red could be for.
So simple as that here. We have the Urza's Mine coming down to join those 2 towers. Capiello still a ways off of that last Tron piece here.
Oh, but if he finds it, he actually gets to Ulamog.
Oh, because he's got the double tower draw. All right, so we could have a draw step for Capiello being hugely impactful. Kowalski, in the meantime, needs to make hay while the sun shines.
Kowalski has a Reality Smasher ready, but do you want to expose it to a land and a cracking of the Oblivion Stone?
Because any land, right? Any land will be able to activate that Oblivion Stone. Matter Reshaper is one way for him to stay in it. Draws a card off it.
He's not losing much, but he's also giving your opponent a card with Thought-Knots here, and now the Reality Smasher is certainly stronger the turn after the Oblivion Stone has been cracked, but it's an instant speed activation, so maybe you just want to play the Reality Smasher now and then continue deploying threats.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's also the high upside of Capiello just straight up bricking, and then the Reality Smasher gets in for 10.
Of bricking with the land,
yeah.
Any land. Yeah, I think casting Reality Smasher here is very, very reasonable.
Kowalski having a good long think about things, however.
Kowalski has so many follow-ups. I don't think he's losing much, and otherwise the Reality Smasher is delayed by so many turns. He's also bringing his opponent down to 10, so Ulamog is really dangerous for Davide.
So a 4th land here for Kowalski. It's important to note here, I think it's really important to note that if Kowalski doesn't play the Reality Smasher here, as he does, if he delayed it to it's not that he's going to delay it to next turn. It would be the turn after that, because, of course, of the instant speed activation of Oblivion Stone. So a huge hit here, and Cappiello needs to find a land. It is land or bust here for him as Mono Green Tron, just like that off the top, finds the card he needs. So Oblivion Stone here.
It's not a power plant, though.
Is going to blow up the world, and all of them are going to get done. That means a couple of triggers, firstly from the Thought Not Seer, drawing Cappiello a card, and a Cavern of Souls entering play on the side of Kowalski. Eldrazi, presumably the name here for the Cavern of Souls.
Probably not relevant as well.
And Kowalski now.
Could name Ooze.
Oh yes, for the Scavenging Oozes in hand, or in his deck at least. Another Thought Not Seer. Let's have a look at what you're working with, says Kowalski. That one-off World Breaker would be a nice hit with the Thought Not Seer, preventing that recursion engine, although maybe that's not the thing at the front of his mind here, Simon.
No, I think he's planning to win with Eldrazi Obligator at some point, and he's already very close to doing so. If he had it, I think he might have had lethal already. Yeah, I think he would have had lethal with a 3-1 haste and a lightning bolt. So we might see Gregor leave Cappiello with some of his creatures, knowing that he is able to win if he ever finds an Obligator.
It's going to be Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger that hits the exile zone now, and a Scavenging Ooze is the follow-up play for Kowalski.
Yep.
Looks like he did indeed name Ooze with Cavern of Souls, Simon.
Sometimes you have to name Ooze.
Sometimes you just got to name the Ooze.
Of course, he also has more than enough sources for his Eldrazi, and most Eldrazi in his deck are colorless anyway, so Cavern of Souls really not that important in this matchup.
And Cappiello not running too much in the way of counterspells. May have a Warping Whale or something, but even that's not going to do too much here.
Power plant off the top.
Easy game. And so for Cappiello now, huge big stack of mana, and it's a Walking Ballista for 6. Shoot down that Scavenging Ooze now, before it can get too out of control. And Kowalski, has he just got it here with an Obligator?
Not against Walking Ballista. Obligator, it doesn't really trade very favorably against Walking Ballista.
Because not only does it not steal the creature, it means that also the Ballista can shoot it in response.
Exactly. And this is a scarier card to deal with. I think Gregor actually has lethal here, if I correctly saw that he's holding a Lightning Bolt.
So Reality Smasher comes down. It's Best Bard to Thought Not Seer, already playing second fiddle here. Best Supporting Actor, of course, going to the 4-4. And Cappiello's got a tricky decision to make here because, of course, Kowalski, if he does have that bolt, is just going to be straight up dead here in the face of this 5 damage from the Reality Smasher. No slow rolls from Kowalski. Get you, he says. And that is that for Davide Cappiello going down in game number 1 to Gregor Kowalski. Cappiello, we did big up the fact that these mono green Tron decks are very good at finding Tron on turn number 3. Didn't happen there for him, Simon.
No, and we can see that it's a completely different deck if you don't have 7 mana on turn 3, 9 or 10 mana on turn 4. These kind of draws where you can just play a Tron piece, play your expedition map, get Tron assembled with minimal mana and card investment. Those are the ones where Tron looks really dominating.
So Davide Cappiello, he's going to hit his sideboard, as of course is Kowalski. You see them examining the opposing deck lists here, and this is something that's routine for our top 8s at all of these competitive events. Players are given access to opposing deck lists just to ensure an even playing field, just to make sure that both players have got all the information on an even setting, so they don't have friends perhaps watching glued to the coverage who are going to be able to give them insight that's unfair for one of the other players to deal with. So we can look at Davide Cappiello's sideboard here. He's got a couple of Thrag Tusks, a couple of Nature's Claims, 3 of both of those cards, 2 Thought Not Seers, 2 Relic of Progenitors, 2 Pithing Needles, 1 Life from the Loam, 1 Kozilek, and a Grafdigger's Cage here, Simon. I mean, Gregor Kowalski's deck is super, super weird. What is Cappiello thinking here as he tries to sideboard against it?
I think he's going. And one card for this matchup is actually Thragtusk, which is just great at trading with Thought-Knot Seers and Reality Smashers.
So this is one way here for Cappiello to just essentially try to even his footing a little bit there. And some of these mid-range options in the board, in a more general sense, Simon, just really good at lowering the curve of the Tron deck and making them less reliant on having that huge availability of mana.
You also know that Ugin is pretty much a dead card. You don't really want to draw it. So I could see bringing in maybe even Thought-Knot Seers, simply because the threat of Eldrazi Obligator is so big. If you expect that there's an Obligator in the opponent's hand, casting any of your huge threats can just lose you the game on the spot.
So that's how Cappiello is looking to stem the bleeding in his way. Kowalski, on the other hand, you can see his sideboard across the bottom of the screen there. Let's talk about some of the options that are available to him here. Crumble to Dust, a slam dunk include?
Yeah, we don't have to talk much about this. 2 Crumble to Dust there for this matchup, and they're going to come in for sure. Note how Noble Hierarch and Singleton Birds of Paradise actually accelerate that Crumble to Dust to turn 3, and that makes a huge difference. Also, I would bring in 2 Ancient Grudge. It never really hurts to be able to Ancient Grudge an Oblivion Stone, or maybe even an Expedition map if you're lucky.
Just snipe it on turn 2 before they've had a chance to activate it, perhaps?
I don't want Scavenging Ooze in this matchup. Let's just take it out. I don't think you need Dismember, even though we saw Kowalski keep it in. He used double Dismember on an Ulamog. Lightning Bolt, well, if your opponent is on 3, it's great. Otherwise, you don't want it against Tron.
Well, we'll see how both of these players have chosen to position their decks post-board now as we continue to explore the quarterfinals here of GP Lyon here on Sunday Night Magic. We're going to get stuck in once again as soon as these players have finished shuffling and present their decks to their opponents. Now, of course, we saw Red-Green Eldrazi get up in game number 1. Simon, would you say that's a characteristic result in this matchup? How would it generally perform over time?
I think, like I said, that Kowalski made a really smart metagame call with his deck. I don't expect him to be a heavy favorite in game 1. I think, for example, that when you're looking at the Tron against Eldrazi Tron matchup, you're actually quite happy playing Eldrazi Tron. But Kowalski has just this little bit more of disruption and Eldrazi Obligator as a way to punish some of the most powerful things that Tron can do. So I would say Kowalski is a slight favorite in game 1, but actually a much bigger favorite in sideboarded games. Bring
in some of those hard-hitting heavyweight cards like Crumble to Dust and what have you. This is going to, well, it could be truly decisive here. And Kowalski, I mean, you're always happy to have snuck in a game 1 victory. He here is going to be able to lean on those sideboard cards and try to get underway with a victory in game number 2. We'll see how things go there. Now, we do have some updates from our back tables here. I can tell you that in addition to Kowalski winning game 1, it looks like Julian Steele also managed to steal a victory against his opponent David Jurich on Jeskai Control. And we have also Joshua Bausch in the Tron Mirror on the back table number 4, getting up against Matitz Penko there. And Marcio Carvalho has also beaten Marco Di Togni there. That's an Abzan mirror between those two players. I think very, very close to a 75-card mirror, Simon. If not exactly that, but very, very close to it.
Yeah, looking at the deck list, they did look very, very similar.
Right now, however, just waiting for these two players to get ready with their decks now for game number 2 of the first quarterfinal of GP Lyon. The format, of course, being modern. And in the booth, it's me, Riley Knight, and it's him, Simon Gertzen. These two players opening up their accounts with 7 cards, fresh off the top. And let's see how they're treating them here. Easy snap off mulligan here for Davide Cappiello. That's good to see that sort of stuff. It means that his mind was very, very clearly made up. Doesn't seem to be too happy about it, however, Simon.
Well, you usually are not too happy to mulligan when you're down a game. Is Kowalski also mulliganing?
He may indeed be here.
Yeah, he's shuffling.
Looks like both players going down to 6 here. Kowalski will be, well, a little less perturbed by it than his opponent.
He's also on the draw. Just like in game 1, I wanted to mention, Kowalski snuck in 8th place.
Oh, yeah.
So he... even if he has good matchups in this top 8, which I think he does, it will be difficult for him being on the draw in every single match that he has to play.
So here we go. We can see if they're going to have any better fortunes with the 6 off the top now after mulliganing. Is mulliganing particularly punishing for either of these lists here, Simon?
For Tron, it definitely isn't, because, well, usually you need lands and spells, but when 3 of your lands can produce 7 mana, that's a huge benefit to actually circumvent that mulligan disadvantage.
Oh yeah, Capiello only needs 4. He go down to 4. He just needs 3 Tron pieces and a card.
Oh, I mean, we are joking here, but it's actually true. You can have a 4-card hand, which just beats most 7-card hands in the format.
We caught up with various Tron players throughout the weekend, Simon, and a lot of them talked about that the mulliganing decisions that they had to make with Tron just to find the Tron pieces. Like essentially, we had one player claiming he just mulligans every single hand that doesn't have a Tron piece in it. I think
it's even more than that. What you really want is you want to see 2 Tron pieces or 1 Tron piece and a way to find another one. If you're looking at a blank Urza's Tower and you don't have any of the search cards, that's already not a great hand.
So Capiello, has he gone down to 5 here as we see him shuffling again? Kowalski carefully considering his 6. Looks like he might be happy with it, but Capiello, oh my goodness me, not a happy chappy here as he goes down to 5. You can see that handsomely dressed gentleman in the back of the screen there behind Kowalski. So he was winking away at the camera there, enjoying every moment of the coverage here from, one of the best seats in the house, Simon, if you don't include ours.
Ours are the best seats.
Would say so. Kowalski shuffling up Capiello's deck now, and he is, of course, down to 5. So 5 of the best here for Capiello. Let's hope that he has a little bit better fortune now with his mulligan. It's not looking great, although we do have at least 1 Tron piece. He's going to keep it. Both players scrying. Capiello downstairs. Kowalski on the other hand. See what he wants to do here.
Both players seem to have decent hands here. Of course, Capiello on 5, not where he wants to be, but power plant and into expedition map, that's not a bad start at all. Kowalski also with mana acceleration, and I saw at least a reality smasher to put on pressure.
Power plant into expedition map means that Capiello is a long way towards finding those 3 Tron lands, but oh, look at this, Cavern of Souls on human to power out a noble hierarch. Many people would be forgiven for thinking this was 5-color humans from that start.
Cavern of Souls is actually serving quite a lot of purposes in Kowalski's deck. I rather like it.
I guess he could have named Druid as well, but ultimately choosing to go with human there and getting in for 1. Oh, taste it, Davide Capiello.
Kowalski really needs an Eldrazi Temple to start deploying Reality Smasher next turn. Otherwise, he's giving the Tron deck a lot of time, and as you can see, even after a mulligan to 5, already with 2 Tron pieces ready.
And Kowalski with nothing else to do, 3 mana, all dressed up, nowhere to go here. That Karplusan Forest has not been able to help him get anything out. That Karplusan Forest looks older than time itself.
Well, is that Ice Age, maybe?
Is that when it was printed 10,000 years ago?
Yep. In the Ice Age.
That's what I'm saying. In the last Ice Age. Looks even older than that, to be honest. Could be the late Cretaceous by the looks of things. Ancient stirrings here. These stirrings also so ancient. Pre-Cambrian stirrings, Simon.
They're not as old as that Karplusan Forest.
Definitely not as old as the Karplusan Forest, though.
Not a great stirrings there.
No. This card has really shown its power as you know, essentially almost a tutor, was the way that you characterised it there, Simon. But not doing the job for Capiello in the best of ways there. So another noble hierarch is Kowalski's play, in for 2.
Of course, the most awkward turn to draw the hierarch, where you wanted to draw Eldrazi Temple or Crumble to Dust, or if you had the noble hierarch turn earlier, you would have already been casting Reality Smashers.
But just nothing else to do with his mana. He's got a Reality Smasher in hand, but no way to cast it this turn.
7.
And 7 mana. He is Khan liberated. Capiello on a mulligan to 5 is in a very commanding position now as Kowalski has to exile a card from his hand.
No, I think that's a smart choice, because your opponent just rammed with another noble hierarch. So if you take away one mana, you're not actually denying them of the play that they couldn't make this turn. So plussing, I think, putting more pressure on Kowalski to deliver something good next turn.
Now we know, of course, he can deploy a Reality Smasher, which is going to cut Khan down to size at least a little bit here.
But is it good enough?
Well, let's see what Kowalski's looking to discard. Reality Smasher, Cavern of Souls in hand for him. A couple of other options as well. It's going to be the Cavern, however, that hits the bin. And a stomping ground off the top for Kowalski. He's continuing to have a pretty bad time of it.
No signs of crumble to dust. Might already be too late now, but well, we will see. I expect this Karn to go down to 3 loyalty now.
Be a hit for 7 now with the Exalted triggers.
Exalted once again being super relevant here.
Going to knock Karn down to 3 loyalty, as you said. Of course, it's not 0. And untapping with a Karn is a great position for Davide Capiello to be in here.
Oh, I think Capiello might actually just go for Oblivion Stone and exile a land. Leaving Kowalski with 2 Kaplusen Forests looks pretty tasty.
So now, if he activates the Karn Liberated Exile Target Permanent mode on Reality Smasher, he'll still have to discard a card, right?
Reality Smasher is... I thought it was only triggering of spells, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's spells or abilities.
I'll have to get that confirmed now.
It depends on the exact wording of Reality Smasher.
Karn Liberator exiles here an Endbringer by the look of things.
Yeah. So like I said, it's target of a spell. So actually with abilities, you're free to choose Reality Smasher. And this game is not looking particularly fair.
No, look at this. Here is Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, coming down. And once again, the Reality Smasher's ability not doing anything against opposing Eldrazi here.
No, now we need Eldrazi Obligator. This is what Kowalski built this deck for.
So, it would seal the deal here. Well, it would get him a lot further back into it, at least.
This is the problem. 13 is not sealing the deal.
3 mana here for Kowalski. It's not an Eldrazi Obligator. It's a Matter Reshaper instead. Back to Capiello, who is able to untap with a Karn Liberated and an Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. You would think this game is all but his, Simon.
Yeah, this does not look great for Kowalski.
So Mono Green Tron continues its onslaught of this tournament, although you could be forgiven for thinking it was utterly dominant here at this tournament. There are obviously 4 Tron decks in the top 8 of GP Lyon here, but ultimately there were actually only 2 decks beyond that in the top 32. So in the top 32, 6 Tron decks altogether, which is not a staggeringly high figure, although a bit bigger than the diversity that we've seen in recent times. Yeah,
what is that's about 20%. I think that's a high number for modern.
From a modern format where 8 or 9% of a metagame share has been considered high.
And we've seen much more diverse top 8s as well.
Well, yes, over the last 2 weeks, of course, over in Toronto, we saw 7 different archetypes in the top 8. In Bilbao, we saw 7 different archetypes in the top 8. And between those 2 top 8s, Simon, only 1 deck was represented in both. So it's not the same decks that are performing well every week. But certainly it has been Mono Green Tron's top 8 here, with a full half of the top 8 consisting of these Mono Green Tron lists.
And I think Kowalski has the best chance of winning in a Tron-filled top 8. When I look at Abzan, I don't see a deck that's happy to play against Tron. When I look at Jeskai control, I would much rather be on blue-white control with those spreading seas.
So Kowalski now, fighting to the bitter end. Half of his library is in exile. After that, Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger.
Also on 4 life.
Also on 4 life. That does come into it somewhere, you're right. And a Thrag Tusk is going to buffer up Davide Capiello's life total even further here. Is there a way for Gregor Kowalski to win this game? Draws off the top. 4 mana, and it is a Thought Not Seer, revealing Oblivion Stone. 2 Noble Hierarchs and the Thought Not Seer, all that Kowalski has to play with, and it's not going to be enough in the face of Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger. Turn 4, Karn, and Davide Capiello getting away with murder there, Simon. A victory off of a mulligan to 5.
Yep, on the play, down a game, mulligan to 5, but gets there rather easily, and I think it confirms what we've been discussing. Tron does have to mulligan aggressively, but it can afford to do so.
So both these players going to have one more chance to hit their sideboards here, and before we come up against the decider between Capiello and Kowalski here. This is going to be, well, the result of this game will determine our first semi-finalist here. with both players tied at 1-1. Both players hungry. Both of them hustling and bustling very hard, hollering for that dollar. You know that they want to pick up. They've already got that Pro Tour invite, but they want to pick up that check for 10K and, of course, the hardware that comes with it, Simon.
Yep, the trophy, $10,000 for the winner.
Not a bad day at the office.
Absolutely not.
Not a bad day at the office for any player in the top 8, but, of course, they're in it to win it. Play until the final whistle blows here. So, these players, once again, looking through their sideboard. Kowalski may be looking to make some changes here. I saw he brought in a natural state, a number of other cards as well here. But, I mean, what changes can he possibly be thinking about here? What are the cards that are at least in the conversation for inclusion here? We see on your screen the sideboard.
In the conversation are definitely the natural states, the Ancient Grudges, and the Crumble to Dust. And Crumble to Dust is in the deck for sure. I kind of like Ancient Grudge. The downside to Ancient Grudge is that it's 2 mana as opposed to Natural State, which only costs 1. So if you're on the draw and you are hoping to snipe Expedition maps, then you need Natural States over Ancient Grudge, which is clearly the more powerful card.
Ancient Grudge, of course, one of the all-star cards against Lantern Control, which hasn't had a great couple of weeks since, of course, its ascendancy at Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan here. We did see the deck crush the entire tournament in the hands of Luis Salvato, but since then just hasn't put up the numbers.
No, I think the metagame got a lot more hostile towards Lantern. Players are starting to play more Ancient Grudges mostly, but also, you know, certain tech cards like Hostage Taker to fetch with, Traverse the Ovenwald, and as we've discussed many times before, it takes a very particular player and very particular skills to navigate Lantern well enough and quickly enough.
Yes, this was the thing. The deck is undoubtedly powerful, but it requires a huge investment of time and energy, and it is so easy to play it badly. It is so difficult to play this deck with any semblance of competency. You have to know not only your deck in and out, but the opponent's deck in and out. If you're up against a wild card weirdo deck like Red-Green Eldrazi, what are you worried about? You don't know, and knowing how to navigate those situations is what separates the good from the great when it comes to Lantern Control. I don't expect this deck to really overperform at any situation, because there is just a natural pressure valve for it in the terms of the cap of player skill.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely not a dominating force in any real way. Also, its Tron matchup is pretty miserable.
And right now we've seen Tron as the deck to beat, certainly in this top 8 here. Things set to change in the coming weeks, of course. We do have the very high-profile unbannings of both Jace the Mind Sculptor and Bloodbraid Elf. They're set to change the modern format, well, for good moving forward. And Simon, I'm very excited to see what impact these 4-drops have on the format. This weekend, however, of course, it's been their final week on the bench, and we've seen a format really at its peak. It could continue this terrific trend of a very diverse and open Modern field, and we're certainly all hoping so, because Modern really in one of the best positions it's been for a very long time.
But for example, would you put Bloodbraid Elf into Red-Green Eldrazi? I don't think you do. I think it's not a card that gives this deck something that it wants, because your cards are inherently more powerful if they are all Eldrazi and they get boosted by Eldrazi Temple. So finding these shells for Bloodbraid Elf is going to be, I think, a lot more difficult than those for Jace the Mind Sculptor.
At long last, ladies and gentlemen, these players have dealt themselves out their opening hands, and we are now going to see these players get ready for game number 3. You are watching the Sunday Night Magic with Riley Knight and Simon Goertzen, and after this, of course, some of the semi-finals will be brought your way by Tim Willoughby and Matej Zadelkai. You're not going to want to miss a moment, ladies and gentlemen, of the continued coverage of GP Lyon. Gregor Kowalski and Davide Cappiello. Looks like Cappiello once again on a mulligan, although after a timely victory on a mulligan to 5, maybe he's not so worried about it this time around, Simon.
Well, he's on the draw now. He knows about Kowalski's deck list, so he also knows about Crumble to Dust. If Kowalski starts off with a Hierarch or a Birds of Paradise, that turn 3 Crumble to Dust is going to be on Cappiello's mind.
Turn 3, of course, powered out by something like a Birds of Paradise or a Noble Hierarch. Kowalski's deck, I mean, for those of you interested in learning more about it, you can actually expect a write-up of it tomorrow. Matej Zadelkai came and gave us the scoop that Kowalski has already written an in-depth guide to this archetype, so keep an eye out tomorrow. As all of the usual literature is published across the internet, you're going to be able to get a breakdown of the deck from the man himself. Simon, is this something that Modern is going to have to get across in the coming weeks? Do you expect it to stick around?
Well, I think it's definitely a fringe strategy, and it's pretty clear that Kowalski has been rewarded for the metagame that he faced this weekend. And as we've said, Modern is relatively slow to adapt, but Red-Green Eldrazi, if you look at the list, if you look at how it plays, this is not some completely new crazy archetype that's going to take Modern by storm.
No, for sure, but it still definitely is a little bit of a curveball here for many players who's sitting down and seeing Cavern of Souls into Noble Hierarch strap themselves in for a fast blinding game with 5-color humans. All of a sudden they're getting beat to death with Thought-Knot Seers and Reality Smashers.
Yep. And I think it's great that Kowalski found a new deck in Modern, basically. And that's actually always so cool about this format. A deck even like Lantern, for example, it existed in the card pool, it just didn't exist in players' perception.
Here we are, my friends, off to the races with game number 3 of the quarterfinals of GP Lyon. And, whoa, my goodness me, hang on, I'm just going to have to take this call very quickly, Simon, because it looks like Winter 2014 is calling me, and they want their turn to play back Thought-Knot Seer off double Eldrazi Temple. That's a huge play here for Kowalski.
Yep, Eye of Rugen, not legal in Modern. Turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer is, however, possible.
The double Eldrazi Temple draw is going to be all the more backbreaking if Kowalski has another land and something like a Thought-Knot Seer. Capiello's got to be shaking in his cotton socks here as he worries about what Kowalski can bring to bear. This is a big play, a 4-4 on turn. I mean, it's no 2-2, it's no 2 4-4s like we might see with Hollow One. But Simon, still, what a play from Kowalski here.
And it's he's threatening a turn 3 Reality Smasher to follow it up with.
He does indeed have those cards in hand. So Capiello already being forced back onto the ropes, dodging and weaving, but Kowalski has come up with the goods. What do you take from this Thought-Knot Seer here?
I think it's difficult. I'm looking most... I think I would take Ancient Stirrings, because Capiello is not guaranteed to hit a second land in his next turn, and your deck is actually quite good against Wormcoil Engine. If your deck was very weak against Wormcoil Engine, then that would also be a reasonable card to take, because if your opponent doesn't hit a land drop here, they're pretty much dead anyway.
Ancient Stirring's the pick here for Kowalski as he looks to get well and truly ahead of this game. Capiello having a think about things. Sanctum of Ugin is going to cast this Sylvan Scrying off the back of the Chromatic Star. A couple of updates, however, from the back tables here. We do have a win to report on the side of Marcio Carvalho, who won 2-0 against Marco Di Togni. And as far as I know, we can bring you other updates when they come to our hands here. Capiello and Kowalski here at 1-1. Sort of getting very close to a result here. And with Kowalski, you're looking to follow this Thought-Knot Seer up with a Reality Smasher.
Yeah, that might be a really quick finish to a pretty drawn-out match.
So now, Kowalski. A second Thought-Knot Seer now, choosing not to go with the Reality Smasher, which I believe someone you said was in hand.
I thought I saw it. I might be wrong here. Ultimately, not much of a difference whether you play Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher, or Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher, Thought-Knot Seer. It's crushing nonetheless.
Yes, nonetheless, it certainly is doing that, with Capiello pretty low on ways forward here, as he doesn't have a way to easily get himself to Tron quick enough for it to do anything. That Oblivion Stone in hand, it'd be great if it could clear the way, but these Thought-Knot Seers are already have had a chance to go to town. With a Sylvan Scrying, removing Capiello's easiest way to find that third Tron piece as well. So some excellent interaction here for Kowalski as he gets in for 4. And there is another update on the back table. In our Tron mirror, surprisingly, Tron was victorious in the hands of Joshua Bausch. Matitz Penko going down in straight sets there on table number 4. And on table number 2, we also have a straight sets victory going the way of Julian Steele, also on Tron. So we have at least 2 semi-finalists here playing Tron, with Jeskai Control going down. And this means that this is the last quarterfinal that we're going to see today, with our final semi-finalist either Davide Capiello or, much more likely, Gregor Kowalski, as we see a reality smasher close things out. Simple as that, as Davide Capiello cannot believe it, as a double Eldrazi Temple draw results in a back-breaking victory there for Gregor Kowalski. So, just to recap, let's have a quick look at it once again. We have in the semi-finals Gregor Kowalski, Julian Steele, both of these players on Tron. We also have Marcio Carvalho on Abzan and Joshua Bausch on Tron. Given the matchup that Abzan has against Tron, looks like we're going to have a Tron on Tron final, and indeed a Tron player hoist the trophy, Simon, if things go to plan.
Well, I mean, let's see about that. We still have Gregor Kowalski in the mix.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. On we have 2 Tron decks, 1 Abzan and 1 Eldrazi deck.
Exactly.
I do apologize.
And I do think that Abzan is the underdog against Tron, but we are talking about Marcio Carvalho, and he has shown that he has beaten Scapeshift decks, he's beaten Tron decks, he can also beat the Tron deck on his side of the bracket. 3
Fulminator Mages in the board there, but no, I do apologise. Sorry, we have 2 Tron decks, 1 red-green Eldrazi and 1 Abzan. I apologise for that misstep there. So, that is that for the quarterfinals, my friends. Simon and I are going to step out of the booth right now, make way for Matej Zadelkai and Tim Willoughby, my friends. So make sure you stick around for coverage of the semi-finals here at GP Lyon. We've got to go to a break, but after this, of course, we'll be back with more Live Modern from France. We'll see you soon.